Good morning, everyone. No matter where you are, Austin, Connecticut, West Palm, Michigan, New York, Holland. Welcome to Israel, everybody. Let's pretend, let's imagine, let's go home. Today is an extraordinary day on the Jewish calendar. Oh, I didn't even say Berkeley, of course. Welcome. Welcome, friends from Berkeley. Today is Israel's birthday. Today is the rebirth of our people. 73 years ago, pioneers who were not the first to rejoin our fate with the land of Israel stood in Tel Aviv, and David Ben-Gurion stood at Independence Hall, Hechal HaAtzmaut, and declared our rebirth as a people, as a nation. 10 years after the beginning of a terrible nightmare that we commemorated last week as Yom HaShoah. And there have been many who have given their lives in defense of our state, in defense of our people, so that my daughter could dance in Jerusalem today, so that my sister could rebirth our family, and my nieces, the first in our family born on Israeli soil. So to all of you, Mazel Tov, Yom Huledet Sameach. This is a Shechianu over and over. Israel is 73. And we have so much joy to share. So there are so many ways to do this, and I, on the one hand, want to focus on all the parts of the world. Do that tomorrow. Do that in an hour. Just for right now, only celebrate. Yes, often we talk about how Israel has so much work to do. 4 elections in 2 years, perhaps a 5th. I have no idea what's next. Just celebrate. Just celebrate the miracle of being home, of having a homeland. We face east no matter where we are, unless we're to the east of Israel, in which case you face west. And if you're in Israel, you face Jerusalem. And if you're in Jerusalem, you face the Kotel. And if you're at the Kotel, you face the Holy of Holies. And yes, with the diaspora mentality, we talk about how every human heart is the Holy of Holies since the destruction of the temple. But we went home. And then in 1967, we blew shofar because we reunited Jerusalem. We don't exist to fight, but we have fought to exist, and we are home. And so today, leave everything else behind, friends. Of course, we have so much work to do. We are not out of the woods with a pandemic. We are not out of the woods with the rebirth, please God, of the reliance on science and respect for truth and rebuilding democracy. All of that is true. We will have to fight for racial justice. That remains true today, tomorrow. All of those things are what we do in the world, but we do so with pride and with strength, reborn because of the heroism of those who created the state of Israel, the heroism of those who continue to build the land of Israel, the state of Israel, and who represent our people, trying to do our best in the world on behalf of a tradition that is ancient and reformed, completely transformed by the founding of the state. So Yom Huledet Sameach to all of us. Happy birthday, Jewish people. Now on our holy days, we have texts, we have script. We read the Megillot, the scrolls of Esther on Purim. We read the scroll of Echav, Lamentations on Tisha B'Av. The scroll of Ruth we read on Shavuot. Song of Songs we read on Pesach. And Jonah we read on Yom Kippur. Today we read a different Megillah. Hechal HaAtzmaut, the sanctuary of our independence, where my sister served as a leader, a senior administrator, and a tour guide for some time in Tel Aviv. It is a magnificent place, even if it is a humble building. And on those square inches of space, we declared our independence. And that was the scroll, Megillat HaAtzmaut, the 6th scroll of our people. What do? We recite it. We recite our sacred texts on our holy days. Today is a holy day. So even though there is so much to pay attention to in all the dimensions of our existence, today we focus with joy and celebration. And speaking so personally, my daughter dances in Jerusalem today. My sister dances in Tel Aviv today. Our people is alive. We have work to do in the world. Absolutely. We are called to purpose. Absolutely. We are alive. So, this is a translation of Megillat HaAtzmaut, a translation of Israel's Declaration of Independence. And there are those who sing it, and one day I'll learn the melody. Can't wait to be standing in the state of Israel, celebrating once again. But for now, this is the Declaration of Independence from 1948. Eretz Yisrael was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here, their spiritual, religious, and political identity was shaped. Here, they first attained to statehood, created cultural values of national and universal significance, and gave to the world the eternal book of books. After being forcibly exiled from their land, the people kept faith with it throughout their dispersion and never ceased to pray and hope for their return to it and for the restoration in it of their political freedom. Impelled by this historic and traditional attachment, Jews strove in every successive generation to reestablish themselves in their ancient homeland. In recent decades, they returned in their masses. Pioneers, ma'apilim, and defenders, they made deserts bloom, revived the Hebrew language, built villages and towns, and created a thriving community controlling its own economy and culture. Loving peace, but knowing how to defend itself, bringing the blessings of progress to all the country's inhabitants, and aspiring towards independent nationhood. In the year 1897, at the summons of the spiritual father of the Jewish state, Theodor Herzl, the first Zionist Congress convened and proclaimed the right of the Jewish people to national rebirth in its own country. That right was recognized in the Balfour Declaration of the 2nd of November 1917, reaffirmed in the mandate of the League of Nations, which in particular gave international sanction to the historic connection between the Jewish people and Eretz Yisrael, and to the right of the Jewish people to rebuild its national home. The catastrophe which recently befell the Jewish people, the massacre of millions of Jews in Europe, was another clear demonstration of the urgency of solving the problem of its homelessness by reestablishing in Eretz Yisrael the Jewish state, which would open the gates of the homeland wide to every Jew and confer upon the Jewish people the status of a fully privileged member of the comity of nations. Survivors of the Nazi Holocaust in Europe, as well as Jews from other parts of the world, continued to migrate to Eretz Yisrael undaunted by difficulties, restrictions, and dangers, and never ceased to assert their right to a life of dignity, freedom, and honest toil in their national homeland. In the Second World War, the Jewish community of this country contributed its full share to the struggle of the freedom and peace-loving nations against the forces of Nazi wickedness, and by the blood of its soldiers and its war effort, gained the right to be reckoned among the peoples who founded the United Nations. On the 29th of November, 1947, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution calling for the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael. The General Assembly required the inhabitants of Eretz Yisrael to take such steps as were necessary on their part for the implementation of that resolution. This recognition by the United States of the right of the Jewish people to establish their state is irrevocable. This right is the natural right of the Jewish people to be masters of their own fate, like all other nations, in their own sovereign state. Accordingly, we, members of the People's Council, representatives of the Jewish community of Eretz Yisrael, and of the Zionist movement, are here assembled on the day of the termination of the British mandate over Eretz Yisrael, and by virtue of our natural and historic right, and on the strength of the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly, hereby declare the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael, to be known as the State of Israel. We declare that with effect from the moment of the termination of the mandate being tonight, the eve of Shabbat, the 6th of Iyar 5708, 15th of May 1948, until the establishment of the elected regular authorities of the state in accordance with the Constitution, which shall be adopted by the elected Constituent Assembly not later than the 1st of October 1948, the People's Council shall act as a provisional council of state, and its executive organ, the People's Administration, shall be the provisional government of the Jewish state to be called Yisrael. The State of Israel will be open for Jewish immigration and for the ingathering of the exiles. It will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all its inhabitants. It will be based on freedom, justice, and peace, as envisioned by the prophets of Israel. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions. And it will be faithful to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. The State of Israel is prepared to cooperate with the agencies and representatives of the United Nations in implementing the resolution of the General Assembly of the 29th of November 1947, and will take steps to bring about the economic union of the whole of Eretz Yisrael. We appeal to the United Nations to assist the Jewish people in the building up of its state and to receive the State of Israel into the comity of nations. We appeal, in the very midst of the onslaught launched against us now for months, to the Arab inhabitants of the State of Israel to preserve peace and participate in the upbuilding of the state on the basis of full and equal citizenship and due representation in all its provisional and permanent institutions. We extend our hand to all neighboring states and their peoples in an offer of peace and good neighborliness, and appeal to them to establish bonds of cooperation and mutual help with the sovereign Jewish people settled in its own land. The State of Israel is prepared to do its share in a common effort for the advancement of the entire Middle East. We appeal to the Jewish people throughout the diaspora to rally around the Jews of Eretz Yisrael in the tasks of immigration and upbuilding, and to stand by them in the great struggle for the realization of the age-old dream, the redemption of Israel. Placing our trust in Sur Yisrael, in the Rock of Israel, we affix our signatures to this proclamation at this session of the Provisional Council of State on the soil of the homeland, in the city of Tel Aviv, on this Erev Shabbat, the 5th day of Iyar 5708, the 14th of May, 1948. How can we not weep at the miracle that is the State of Israel? With all of the conversations we will have any other day, today we dance. Today we cry with gratitude. Today we thank God for the homeland that is not only a safe haven, but is also a source of strength and life and light in the world. Yes, we have work to do, but what a blessing that we get to do it as a people once again. We have such miracles in our life to witness and to build and to support. And again, my daughter gets to dance in our homeland. May we all get to dance in our homeland. Soon, safely, joyfully, full of gratitude for the miracle that is the State of Israel. Chag Sameach, everyone. Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach. We have to end with a song, but I'm not going to pick up a guitar. Wherever you are, I hope that you'll sing with me. Kol hod balevav penima nefesh Yehudi בתי מזרח קדימה, עין לציון סופיה. עוד לא עבדה תקוותנו, התקווה בת שנות 2000, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. Chag Sameach, everyone. See you tomorrow at 9 o'clock.